Hello, my miraculous friend, and welcome to another episode of the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. This is Reverend Frances Faden, and I'm so grateful that we get to spend this time today helping you to magnify your miracles. I have such a miraculous guest to share this time with you today, and I'm so excited to introduce her. But before we do that, let's take a few deep breaths together, as we always do, bringing our awareness into this moment. If you are driving, please keep your eyes open, but you can always bring your awareness to your breath. As we start to feel that divine presence within us, supporting us, always present. And knowing that you're going to hear whatever you need to hear today to help you magnify your miracles, whatever that might be. Let's take one more deep breath together in gratitude. We can begin. All right, my friend. Well, if you've been listening to this podcast at all, you know that I only bring on guests that I trust, people that I know that can help you magnify your miracles, people who have written books that I love. And today's guest is all three of these. She's one of my beloved teachers, and I'm so honored to have her here. She's the author of the book that I reviewed for you last week called Roar Like a Goddess. And let me introduce you to my beautiful teacher, Acharya Shunya. I'm going to read a little bit about her so you have an idea of who she is. And hopefully you've already heard of her. Acharya Shunya is a truth teller, a mystic teacher, a trailblazing spiritual teacher, and a best-selling author who facilitates bold authenticity, divine awareness, self-remembrance, and wisdom pathways to awakening within. As the first female head of her 2,000-year-old Vedic lineage from India, Acharya Shunya's open-hearted, inclusive, non-dual teachings reinterpret and recontextualize ancient Hindu teachings and goddess legends for modern times, always honoring her progressive Vedic roots while breaking the shackles of tradition to bring modern-day women an inclusive feminist spirituality. It's so true. In Roar Like a Goddess, Acharya Shunya empowers women everywhere to step into their divine immensity and lead powerful, abundant, and wise lives through her revolutionary revisioning of ancient India's primary goddess archetypes. She is the founder of the Awakened Self Foundation and the nonprofit Vedika Global Incorporated, organizations that are headquartered in Northern California that empower, educate, and inspire a worldwide community of students through online courses, workshops, and retreats in alchemical Ayurveda, inner yoga, universal Advaita, and trainings to awaken the inner goddess. Please welcome with me, Acharya Shunya.
It is such a pleasure to be with you. You call me your teacher, and I find your inner guru so awake and blossomed. It is such a meeting of the souls. Many, many blessings.
Oh, thank you so much, Acharya Shunya. So I just want to let the listeners know a couple of things. The first is that you're probably going to hear me referring to Acharya Shunya as Shunyaji. And anytime if you you go to India, the J-I at the end of a name is honoring someone. So if I'm calling her Shunyaji, that's because she's my beloved teacher and I'm honoring her, just to let them know that. And I know the title of Acharya, it's actually a title. It's not her first name, it's a title. And we'll get to that in just a second. But I always like to ask my guests, Shunyaji, your definition of a miracle. What is your definition of a miracle?
That you think something and it comes true, and you realize that it was all up to you all along. That you can change your perception and the vision changes. So when you recognize your own unbelievable, unboxed power and its inherent connection to the divine allness, that's miracles for me.
Oh, I love that definition. Thank you so much. So beautiful. So you do come from this beautiful ancient tradition. Can you explain in your own words, Acharya, what does that mean, and what is it to be that lineage holder?
An Acharya is someone who has studied the ancient Hindu Vedic scriptures in the right manner for those vast number of years under proper instruction and guidance by someone who has himself done that work.
Mm-hmm.
And then they graduate as not just a knower of those teachings, but also an ambassador of those teachings who have the ability to take on students and plant new seeds. And I am that Acharya, the head of one such rare and well-known lineage from India,
So
doing the work
amazing.
of the Vedas.
So
Yeah.
amazing. So you've written beautiful books. You've written the Ayurvedic Lifestyle Wisdom, which I love, beautiful, so powerful for regaining your health and starting to empower yourself, not only in health, but in all areas. And then Sovereign Self, which is an amazing book. Both of those books really empower the reader to kind of claim their inner authority. But this book, Shunya, this book is like I've been waiting for this book my whole life. This book is so amazing. Can you, with everything that's going on, I know you've been writing it over the years. Can you tell us what was your inspiration for bringing this book forward?
A miraculous inspiration where probably I am a roaring goddess woman
Yes.
in today's world, but it was not plan in my conscious mind to write this book, to be on podcasts such as this one, and to probably be stirring a roaring movement worldwide. And this came from a higher order, a higher calling. And I was working on a book, an academic book on Ayurveda psychology. And literally, I couldn't move one day. It was a goddess festival going on, and I had been lost in goddess consciousness and feeling her through my being and everywhere. And when I tried to type, all that came out were words for the goddess. So I started a clean page on my laptop and I said, let's see where this goes. And a whole river began flowing. And the book started shaping itself. Um, of course, I'm an authority on these scriptures, but it was somewhere maybe in the back of my mind that maybe 10 years later I will do this or not do this. But it had an urgency. It was blessed by Goddess Speed. My publishers loved it. There were barely any changes to the manuscript, and it's being born with a wow. Everybody who's working with it are like, feeling like, what is this? And you know how you said you've been waiting for this all your life, that I've been hearing this from women and men and people of different genders. We're human beings, essentially. And when I wrote it, Francis, like tears would be flowing down, like rivers of grace, and health and well-being would be like just flowing down my eyes. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll need another podcast to talk about what
Yeah.
was that like to
Yeah.
even birth this.
Yeah. Yeah. I can feel it. I can feel the power.
Mhm.
Amazing. For me, I was raised Catholic, and as a little budding goddess as I was, I kept looking for, examples. But as you say in this book, patriarchy, the patriarchal paradigm is so in religion and our culture, and that even the things that were there, I could feel that it wasn't really the true power of what I call Divine Mother. And I started looking when I was like 10 or 11, and I ended up looking at like the Greek goddesses, like, and Athena, and I started to just scratch the surface of like, there's gotta be something, and for a long time I didn't find it. And then, I lived in an ashram for a long time, and that's when I first started learning about the goddesses, Durga and Saraswati and Lakshmi at first. But the cultural context I didn't really understand. So when I was reading your book, it's so powerful because it's like it's not only like updated, but it crosses the east-west barrier. It's like anybody can understand. you don't have to be from India to understand how you can tap into these archetypes. And that's the thing that I personally wanted to thank you for. I'm like, that's why I say I've been waiting for this, because now I understand that, Durga's not just about, this ancient power. It's right now. It's right now. It's
Yeah.
right here. So thank you. I just want to say thank you.
That's true because even growing up in a Hindu culture as a practicing Hindu, I go back to the original roots of Hinduism, which is the Vedas. And to be a Hindu or to be Vedic means to be a global citizen.
Mm,
10,000 years ago, the Vedas proclaimed, 10,000 years ago, they proclaimed this saying in Sanskrit, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, which means the world is a family. And
mm,
they say so in the Vedas that we give this for all humans. This was not just for people who were culturally morphed a certain way, linguistically or religiously, but for all beings. And Durga, her name and her archetype is an eternal potential within all of us to be fearless, to be determined, to be courageous, and to be truthful, and to be self-loving. And it's relevant at all times in all eras. Similarly, Lakshmi, which literally means the one who opens up our luck, our prosperity, our abundance, our balance, she's an attitude, she's a belief, she's an archetype, she's a miracle that we have to unpack.
yeah.
And it cannot be limited to this group of people and not that. So when I was growing up, like there was this very specific way, an ordained way that you access the goddesses. They were put up on a pedestal. We were down here, worldwide. Like whenever I
Yeah.
walked out of my house in the temples, that's how she was. She was this larger and beyond life figure, and we were these creepy, crawly, sad, pathetic human creatures.
Right.
But then in my family, from my guru, who's also your teacher, our lineage teacher, Baba, who you know very well, well, he brought the goddesses down a couple of notches and elevated us humans a couple of notches
Mm.
so that we could meet. And the goddesses then are more vulnerable in my book, and we are more invincible in this book.
I love that. I love that. So beautiful. So, this whole concept, roar like a goddess, every woman's guide to becoming unapologetically powerful, prosperous, and peaceful, which I love. One of the things that you say is your definition of what it is to roar. Roaring it's your authentic voice. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's not about anger, although there is righteous anger. It's about your
Mhm.
authentic voice.
Yeah. Yeah. And typically in a jungle where there are so many sounds, a roar is definitive, it's authoritative, it is sovereign. And so I wanted to compare that voice compared to even our other voices, which are placating, explaining, seducing, manipulating, justifying, begging, seeking permission, to this roar, which then unfolds the deepest wish within us, the deepest needs within us, and the deepest abilities within us to live the life we were meant to lead, to learn the lessons we were meant to integrate, to grow and to become a blessing for ourselves and our planet. Mm.
And now it's so needed. I mean, I think I was listening to your podcast, which to my listeners, please listen to the podcast. It's called Shadow to Self, and it's so powerful. And I was listening to you talking about this whole process of owning this energy. Like the energy is already here. And your own story, I'm wondering if you would share a little bit of your journey of how it went from being a devotee of the goddesses, or as I would say, Divine Mother, being a devotee, to actually embodying. I love that story that you share about your own very human journey in your marriage and just what shifted, because I think that's really what this book is helping us to do.
My tradition gives us three ways to connect with divinity. And one is as a devotee, and the second is as a friend, and the third is as embodied divinity, like you yourself, your higher self is that divinity. And typically, many of us remain at the devotee stage, and that's just fine because it keeps your ego in curb, and you know there's a higher power to access. But when you start seeing the goddess as your friend, then you see her in the dark circumstances and the difficult circumstances too, helping you out, giving you an impetus to grow and learn and transcend it. And when you see her as your own self, then watch out, you become really powerful, right? So, my impetus to continue on this journey was the knowledge received from my Guru Baba, my tradition, which said that I have these ways to explore my own divinity. I can grow into it. I don't just have to be in part of an institutionalized understanding. I can take it into a deeply intimate experience of divinity. But it was when I walked into an arranged marriage, which from all other purposes was fine, and there was nothing extraordinary except that there was these cold, invisible walls. And anywhere I tried to be myself, and I have a, as you may and as our listeners may have, the freer you are inside you, the more dimensions you have, the more boundless you are. So I kept hitting these cold, freezing walls of disdain
Mm,
or scorn. And it was not very obvious. It's not like anybody was in my face abusing me, because then that's easy. You get a red flag and you leave. It's like people were kind, but they were really condescending. And there was this expectation to toe the line. And when you have these kind of mixed signals and you're all of 20 something, you're confused. And you're also a woman who's grown up in patriarchal culture. You're also someone who's a spiritual teacher or a seeker for sure. And you're like really thinking, is it me? Because spiritual people always quickly think there's something we have to do. Like it's more work for ourselves. Let me take it back in the inner mill and work at it. And so I was trying this out from various dimensions, but thanks to the knowledge I have of Vedas and the roaring stories that my mother told me at bedtime, I knew afterwards that I'm facing an invisible monster that's everywhere. And I didn't really know this word patriarchy back then. My English was not as, you know, as blossomed as it is now.
mhm,
But I knew that I'm meeting some delusional patterns of expectations because I'm a woman. And that those patterns excuse men, but they don't excuse me. And somehow I have to, turn, I have to like bend over backwards to try and, you know, meet and please everyone. And because this was not my experience growing up, Francis, I grew up in a liberal, progressive,
mhm.
spiritual minded family, which in retrospect didn't really prepare me for this other life. It's like,
Right.
I want to go back to Baba and say, tell me about what I'm going to face when I get married. But I had his knowledge and I could discern, I could detach from like reactivity to knowing that it's not about what they're doing wrong. It's about what I want to see happen right for me.
Mhm,
It's not even about how they're wounding me. It's about, gosh, what's the potential in me to be who I want to be? And even then, back then, I knew that I'm not leaving this marriage because of this person and that sorry situation. I couldn't express it, Francis, back then. Your teacher didn't know those words, but I had this knowingness that what I'm doing is important for the planet.
mhm,
Like I have to do this for everyone. I had this collective sense back then. And I think it worked for me. And now I and my former partner are friends. We're all friends and we laugh about it because time changes people, perspectives come in, and everybody is happy for who I am and what I blossomed into.
It's
My little
amazing.
me, rather,
Yeah, well, that's a miracle story right there.
right
That's
there.
amazing about
Yeah.
really stepping into that. Oh, so powerful. So, Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati. Some people may not know these goddesses. I'm familiar with them, but as I said, this book brings them to life and makes them so real and so relatable in such a powerful way. But can you tell us a little bit about the Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, and our inner Durga, our inner Lakshmi, our inner Saraswati?
It's so fascinating that in the Vedic culture, power itself has a gender, and it's the feminine gender, and known as Shakti. And because it's such a complete power, it's not the incomplete power that we are aware of, where that incomplete power leaves us grasping and greedy for more
Mhm.
entitlement. It makes us arrogant and it makes us unhappy ultimately. This is power that comes with peace, with health, with well-being, and is known as Shakti. And then Shakti herself is imagined as a divine intelligence, a divine feminine force. If we were to see her in form, then we would see her as Goddess Shakti. And her chief incarnations or incantations are Durga, Lakshmi, and Saraswati. When that same power within us awakens, it is said that the goddess is sleeping within you, but just talking about her or even listening to our podcast, is going to stir her. And as she stirs and awake, yawns, and then awakens and comes into her being within us, then we will feel that same original power as courage to
Mm,
face what we were not willing to face about our own bad habits or some relationships where we need to bring in more emotional distance or better boundaries. It gives us forbearance to tolerate, maybe like exercising every day if that's what we need to do. It needs a certain forbearance
mhm,
despite it being a rainy day or cold day or chilly day or just a sleepy day. You're doing it. It gives us the ability to that courage to be who we are as divine mother shaped us, made us through not only at birth but also through the wear and tear of life. It gives you a remarkable ability to have radical self-worth through
mm,
her. So Durga power used for self-stability, self-clarity, and self-security, so to say. Then this power, the same power, when it starts helping us not just survive but thrive, not just work at something but play, to be pleasured sexually and other ways, to be prosperous financially and other ways, abundant through relationships, laughter, dinner parties, pillows in the house, like just things that are beautiful, Mother Nature, sunrises, sunsets, then she is called Lakshmi. And when she rises within us, we start self valuing ourselves,
mhm.
caring for ourselves, giving gifts to ourselves, feeling this need to take breaks, breathe, listen to this podcast without having to multitask, just, really uh, enjoying being in the being because your power is helping you relax into your earthly life, relax into your earthly roles as a daughter, child of that divine mother. And finally, the same power, when it becomes a torch and turns inwards and helps us do self inquiry. Who am I? What is my relationship with this universe? What is my relationship with the divine feminine, masculine, transgender, divine allness, divine formless, whatever way we want to access that divinity? Am I forever separate? Am I a representation, or am I inherent dimension of it? Can I find that dimension, that spirit within me when I meditate, when I contemplate, when I chant? that kind of final power that leads to that leads to popping of all kinds of delusions of would-haves and should-haves and could-haves and scripts and conditionings and cultures and bearings and promises that we made when we were half awake, kind of like just this freedom to really roar with clarity and ultimately peacefulness in who you are in your life and this whole karmic drama, that force, that power, that goddess who represents it and awakens within us is known as Goddess Saraswati. And these goddesses dwell in every one of us. And these are powers, our own sleeping energies, our own sleeping powers. And we can find some examples of these goddesses even in the modern world, because sometimes, like when I look at Oprah Winfrey, I feel like in the beginning she had to channel Durga power. And then when she was like a top host and she was enjoying her wealth and her
Yeah.
status, and she was doing all kinds of projects, she was very outward and enjoying and playful. She's channeling the Lakshmi power. And now with her soulful Sundays and her introversion and her deeper quest, you can just see it. She's now channeling the Saraswati goddess. So it's very relatable to our world today.
That's a perfect example. I love that because we can see that, like how she went through that whole process, and that reflects our own journey. I know for me, I'm laughing at myself as I'm listening to your story because I immediately wanted to go to Saraswati energy. Like as soon as I learned about it, I was like, I want to do that. And then I feel like Lakshmi's been tapping me on the shoulder and saying, come on back here. We got to get some stability. We got to get you to enjoy it. Like we're not ready for it quite that yet. So it's interesting. It feels like it's like a spiral journey, that it's not just like 1, 2, 3. It's more of how these energies are all inside of us at the same time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. And this is a non-dual circle. It's not a sequential journey that begins with Durga and ends with Saraswati. For someone, it may begin with Saraswati, like it began for you or for me, even with the scriptures and the study and the meditations. But then I had to visit Durga and really, breathe on my own terrain at my own will and right. And now I'm enjoying Lakshmi through name, fame, wealth, abundance, lots of family, lots of support, lots of garlands and flowers and thank you cards from my students worldwide. This is Lakshmi. So it just goes round and round. But what knowing these goddesses through the book will do is give us like a map to know where we need to look at. And here are some mythological stories and unpacking their symbolism, because you never forget those stories. You may forget do this and do that, but you don't forget a vivid story and its teaching. And then you start living that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited about the things that you're going to be offering related to this specific teaching. You have beautiful offerings already. For people who don't know, Acharya Shunya's got a couple of different websites. One is called the Awakened Self Foundation. And it's awakenedself.com, where there's different courses that are available, but specifically for this book launch. So this podcast will be coming out, I think September 7th, the day after your book comes out. It comes out on September 6th, where I'm highly encouraging everybody to get it if you haven't gotten it already, if you haven't pre-ordered it. Tell us about the event happening on September 17th.
Well, I was receiving so many good wishes from so many esteemed spiritual teachers, leaders in their own fields. So I decided to bring them all together. And my team said, yeah, well, let's just do an online book launch in the world of pandemics and whatnot. And so a great gathering is happening, and all are invited. Only a registration is required. And then beginning 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., it's going to be a book launch plus a women's empowerment retreat. And when we say women, we put a star there because we don't restrict the feminine gender to only biology. We extend the feminine space to awareness and consciousness. and identification with the feminine being. And men too. My husband would be there, my son would be there, my father would be there. So lots of men who support equality, who support truth, who support the sharing of power, and who are enjoying and waiting for the pendulum to swing and for the divine feminine to emerge in balance with the beautiful divine masculine, not to push it away, but to uphold both of them. And there is even the concept of feminine, mixed gender, transgender in Vedas. So why not just uphold divinity, period? So I invite everyone, if they are listening, to check out the events listing and join me for the book launch.
And I will be there, so I'm excited. We'll all get to be there and be supporting you. And I'll put the link in the show notes for you so that you can find that. But it's awakenself.com/roar dash book dash launch. And I love your retreats. I mean, I love everything that you do, but retreats are really, really special. And there's a special energy that comes through when we're in the retreat. And speaking of that, I don't know if you'd be open to doing this, but I love your teaching about this. It's the simple yet powerful way we can connect with the inner goddess in the morning with our hands and the mantra. Would you be willing to share that with the listeners
Oh,
of,
absolutely.
I
I'm glad
love
you
this.
asked. Yeah, something tangible that our
Yes.
listeners can walk away with. And this practice and this mantra practice is based on this non-dual understanding that the goddess lives far away in some cosmic sphere that is
Right.
inaccessible by our human body and brain, but she's also everywhere around us. She's coming through our every eye, animal, human, plant, but then she's also dwelling within us as our own latent power. And this ritual helps us awaken to that power in the morning. So I'm going to chant it in Sanskrit, Francis, and then
Yes.
chant it in English. So I
Yes,
think
please.
together it will work. So you bring your palms together. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see me do this. And if you're listening to us on podcast, then you can go to the YouTube version of this podcast and see me doing it. But when you wake up in the morning, you may need to rush the bathroom. You can do that. But if you're not in a rush, and you can train your brain to do anything. So I've trained my brain to not be in a rush for anything. And I get up and I open my palms and I look at them, and I'm told that these palms is the home of my goddess, of all three goddesses. And in the front of the palm, on the fingertips, lives Lakshmi, because it is through these fingertips that we type or touch or, cook or dig. So this is where our prosperity, our relationships, and our connections dwell. So we're going to chant that on the tip of my fingertips dwells Lakshmi. And then right here in the center dwells Saraswati, because it's like you're cupping your hands, it's like you're holding something. There's gravitas here from wisdom, and this is Saraswati. And at the root here, this represents Durga, because it is here that you hold something like a spear or a sword, or you even say namaste and you bow to someone. And whether you are forgiving someone or whether you are asserting a boundary, it requires power of Durga to do both. So first I'll chant in Sanskrit because it's really beautiful. And it goes like this. Karagare vasate Lakshmi, Karamadhye Saraswati, Karamule tu Durga, Prabhate Karadarshanam. And you can chant in English. In the front of my palms dwells Lakshmi, and feel that golden light of abundance and well-being here. In the middle, Saraswati, and feel the heaviness that comes, like the weight, the gravitas that comes from deeper, intuitive, restful wisdom. And at the root you dwell, Durga. In the morning, I see you all three. And then you just bless yourself, or bless your heart, or you rub your hands and you bless your eyes, your ears, your throat for your speech, your heart for your feelings, your stomach for your digestion. Touch it up and down your hands and limbs. You're like blessing yourself with your own power. You, Lakshmi, who dwells in my hand. You, Saraswati, who lives in my hand. You, Durga, who imparts strength to my hands. I see you and I hold you close. See? So you can then manufacture your own songs. The point is, they are there. And there are some nights where it's really, really scary, like the night when I went to bed and I had lost my only sibling, and she was only 30 years old, and I lost her to death. And when I got up in the morning, I had like this habit of doing this mantra practice. And as I was doing this, the memory also came that she had died around 9 p.m. last night. So tears were coming up and power was coming up. It didn't break me. I still miss her, but like I feel like it strengthened me. The whole impermanence and loss, and then this goddess permanence and goddess gifts together churn to make another miracle happen, in my life. Make it a routine, and you can do it in the parking lot before you go to your job interview, before you say I do, or before you say sorry. We gotta go our separate ways. You can do this.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's one of my favorites. I love it so much. Get to hear you chanting it. Are there any last things that you'd like to share with listeners, or anything that you'd want to let us know about?
Well, maybe I can ask you that, since you love this and you know how to do this, maybe to support the Roar movement, you would continue teaching this on my behalf on your podcast. That would be
Absolutely.
wonderful. This practice, because I feel like more and more people just knew how much help they have. And the more you acknowledge it, the more it just happens. It'll be a shift in your energy. So that's one thing.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say that do not let the tradition and culture that surrounds the goddesses come in between, because Francis did a great job of bringing that out, that these are timeless teachings. And the cultural part just adds some spice and makes it fun. But what you're going to walk away with is not just more knowledge to chew and digest, but a transmission from the goddess to transform you as you read it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Acharya Shunya, thank you so, so much. I'm so grateful. And I know this book is already blessing the world and bringing so much light, as you have been doing all these years. So I'm so grateful for you being here.
Thank you.
All right, my beautiful listeners, thank you so much for being here. I know you can feel all the miraculous vibrations from this interview. I highly recommend that you check out Acharya Shunya's website and her book. Definitely order it. If you can go to the retreat, I'll be there. It'd be fun to get to hang out together. And remember, my friend, that the key to magnifying your miracles is to know your miracle, just like the goddess, is already here. God bless you, my friends. Bye-bye.